Hello and welcome along to Season 3 of TGP Has A Podcast. Coming up over the next 6 weeks, we talk to 6 more icons of the series. And in week number 1, we talk to a true legend of TGP. He's a TGP2 champion, Veloci esports megastar, and arguably the better Gillissen. It is of course Isaac, who raced in TGP some years ago and since then has gone on to achieve a lot in the world of esports. We sat down in November for a chat about TGP, esports, and much, much more. Welcome along to TGP Has a Podcast. We're absolutely delighted to be having you joining us for Series 3. The term legend does get thrown about quite a bit these days, and that phrase is thrown around quite a bit these days as well. But when we look at it, you really are one of TGP's legends, not just because of what you achieved during TGP, but obviously what you've gone on to do as well. But looking back all those years ago, when you joined the league, and it was autumn of 2013, you joined us in TGP, all the way in TGP2. Did you ever think that any of this would be coming before you?
Oh yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. Honored to be on here. Looking forward to it. And yeah, it's all the way back to 2013 when I was 13 years old, starting with F1 2013 at TGP2 because my brother Kurt was driving in TGP1 and we shared the same setup, same PlayStation, Logitech G27 it was back then.
Fantastic.
Um, and it was I think it was my or I'm sure it was my first like sort of competitive racing I did. Before it was just Gran Turismo open lobbies, Formula One open lobbies career mode, and then when I joined TGP, then things got a little bit more serious for me back then at least. Started practicing for TGP2 races and started to take it really serious. Um, and that was sort of the stepping stone and where I learned most of my beginning skills racing with other people in a competitive and respectful and professional manner. Conducting myself online as well on Twitter. I believe I made my Twitter account right before I joined TGP series. So it was a stepping stone, I would say, for the success that followed later. So yeah, it's a big honor to start in the TGP series and to be featured on this podcast.
And you mentioned obviously your brother Court as well, who obviously still races with us now in TGP
Yeah.
One and obviously TGP GT as well. Was he the sort of reason how you got into racing online? Was that sort of, had you caught the bug before then or?
Well, Kurt and I think caught the motorsport bug because of my dad. He watched Formula One. I remember, I believe, the first ever Formula One race I sort of can remember, sort of watched was Magny-Cours with in 2006. I saw the battle
Okay.
between Schumacher and Alonso. So it was really early. I was 6 back then. We did a bit of racing on old PC with Formula One Challenge 99 to 2002. I don't think that game had any
The
online
career mode
mode on there.
challenge, I think it was, wasn't it?
Career mode. I'm not
I can't
sure. Yeah,
remember its
it
name. It's
was
something along those lines. But yeah,
yeah
I know the
the
game you
F1
mean on
Challenge.
PS2. Yeah.
Yeah, and plenty of rally games as well. Calling McRae Dirt 2 or 3, I don't know. Back then, those were the first games, and we had a little bit of a break in sim racing, but we kept watching Formula One. And then a couple of years later, we got a PlayStation 4, a play seat, and a G27. So that was quite big for us, being kids that like to race online, or not online maybe, but like to play racing video games and watch Formula One. So then we started playing Gran Turismo 5, and F1 2011 was our first game on the F1 series. And then Koert started competing in TGP 1 in F1 2012, and I was watching it a little bit as well. And then he suggested, yeah, maybe you can join TGP 2. It was a bit tricky because we were at that age, we were at the same speed. We were really competitive with each other. If we had a time trial in Gran Turismo 5 for the GT Academy, we'd always compare lap times, and oftentimes back then he would still be a little bit quicker, but we would be really close already in terms of lap time. So the competitive side definitely came from racing with him, and then he suggested to join TGP series, a very fun series, but then probably TGP too because we couldn't race at the same time.
And that competition with Court when you were starting up, as you said, that must have helped really sort of drive you on, really, I guess, to try and get quicker because you had that in-house competition. You know, it was the bragging rights over the dinner table, wasn't it, of who had gone fastest in the academy. That must have really helped sort of motivate you to get quicker, get better, mustn't it?
Yes, definitely. I mean, he was. Some people say the only one you compare to in Formula One is your teammate. Well, he was the only one I could compare to back then because we had the same equipment, same sort of experience. Although I was 2 years younger, we started racing at the same or in the same time frame. And I would say so that he was my main competitive motivation. And well, when we started out as well, my dad was a bit quicker when we were really young, and then quite early on, quite quickly, we started to get better lap times than my dad. He would jump on sometimes as well on the PlayStation. But yeah, I would say
How
if I
did how
remember
did how
correctly.
did he take that you two were getting quicker than him?
No, he took it well. He took it well. Of course, we put many more hours
Yeah,
into it. So yeah, he could understand, and he took it well. He took it well, and we really started to compete in GT Academy. Of course, not yet on the top level yet. We weren't even old enough to compete, I believe, but
right.
we still did the time trials. And what that was the most competitive, or the first competitive sort of competition we competed in, and then we started TGP series, and I got to drive against all of a sudden 12, 13, 14 other, or back then it was still 12 people
Hmm.
in the lobby, I believe, 12 people, which made me quite nervous at 13 years old. I remember the first race at Melbourne, first TGP2 race, my debut. I did qualify on pole position in truly in Isaac style, because I practiced a lot for it. And then in the race, I remember our Logitech G27 wasn't the greatest after 2-3 years of intensive usage. So then halfway through the race, my the G27 started to decalibrate, so I had to turn like 90 degrees right in order to go straight. But
Goodness.
luckily enough, I built up enough of a gap to still manage to win the debut. But yeah, I really tried hard for that one, and I feel like starting at such a young age,
Mm.
and taking it quite serious, it helped me massively as well to overcome those nerves because once you start to drive well in something you really care about, and suddenly you take pole or you're in a good position, then you do get nervous and you start to make maybe mistakes under pressure. And I think that starting from such a young age helped me as well to get used to those nerves, and to be able to maybe not ignore them but drive past them maybe.
And that must have given you a huge confidence boost as well. Although, as you said, you've been practicing for it quite a bit, but your first race to take a pole and a win, despite suffering some very clear understeer issues,
Yeah, only
that
in right-handers.
yeah, that must have been a real boost for you to have that success, to hit the ground running to a certain degree.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, at that point in my life, I didn't have much going on. Of course, I had school. I was playing football. But besides that, my main passion was motorsports and online racing. So it definitely gave me a boost. But back then, I had I had no idea what it could mean in the future, or that I would be anyway close to making it sort of my job or career.
And we know from obviously your time in TGP2 still holding the pole record,
Hmm.
um, from all that time ago. So it was it was evident of just how good you were over one lap. But if it wasn't your G27 that was letting you down, it was your
Or
internet
the yeah.
that would let you
Uh,
down. How frustrating was that for you during your spell to have the disconnection issues that you had to begin with so often?
Yes, so we had a couple of factors that would make the championship and my racing in TGP a bit more spicy. Let's put it like that. So like the G1027, it wouldn't calibrate always that well. We transitioned to a Logi or a Fanatec Club Sport something wheel. I
Mm.
don't know. I can't remember it. But also the pedals with those potentiometers wouldn't always put on full throttle when you pressed it fully, or it would actually have a sticky brake that the brakes would stay on in on a straight. I remember one of the end of season compilations from Joe. He had a great overtake on me going three wide onto the Camel Straight at Spa, but I remember that was mainly because my brake pedal was stuck on the straight and I didn't have any straight line speed. So in qualifying, of course, I took it really serious. I practiced quite a bit qualifying. I think that was my main forte, my main strength,
Mm.
driving the Formula One games. But then in race distances, tire wear, course management back then, and also racing side by side and the start, the initial getaway, I would always get a bit of wheel spin. Um, that those were the main, um, yeah, the main like platforms I would struggle on, and I learned most on during my time at TGP because the qualifying was always all right. I was able to put a quick lap together, but sometimes I struggled with fighting side by side and avoiding contact, avoiding keeping my front wing in one piece, and that's something I really picked up on in TGP series to race side by side and mostly learn about the respect as well between drivers during those races, and that's in esports not always what you get. It's always elbows out, not always giving each other room, not waiting for each other if you put someone off track. But racing in TGP, that was a big thing I learned as well with respect and sportsmanship, and that's something I became sort of known for, I would say as well, early
Mm.
in my esports competition. So that's always a nice thing to have. If you can't win, then that's the second best thing I would say to have as sort of an image.
And it's you want the respect as well, from the other drivers as well. When you're defending against them or when you're attacking for a move, they've got confidence in you that you're not going to do anything silly, I guess, as well, which must be, as you said, quite a privilege for you actually. I presume.
Yeah, definitely. So starting with my first esports races, I was on Project Cars, PlayStation 4 back then, ESL, small ESL cups. But over those years, 3 or 4 years, over the space of 3 or 4 years, I raced pretty much the same sort of guys in esports, and we got to know each other a lot better, uh, especially on track as well. How much space do you need to give him and which drives do you need to watch out for to dive bomb you in a hairpin? But that's something really nice about racing and esports, and I think what you guys build up with TGP as well. You can race online, have a lot of fun, but then when you meet in real life, it's just like you're meeting friends you've known for years, even though you might have not met them in real life yet. I had with esports as well, just meeting those guys at the esports stage. It is really quite a cool thing and a great thing to be part of as well.
And that must be quite a quite an honour for you to be able to have made it to, or be the progression that you saw. That must have been quite nice to have that going on, I guess, mustn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, definitely. It's something so unexpected that you are able to, first of all, get broadcasted while you're driving, while you're racing, and that your name gets mentioned in a broadcast and people are actually watching it. And then as well, esports was quite starting out quite early in racing games, but then you'll be able to raise for money in weekly competitions. It was only 50 quid, but for a 13-year-old, that was massive.
Yeah.
So it started to blow my mind more and more. And then in 2016 or 2017 at Gamescom,
Mm.
qualified for the Project Cars final there, and just seeing loads of people caring about games and racing on a stage. That made me sort of, well, pretty much addicted to competing, and also wanting to, or fueling that competitive feeling of wanting to win. And then back then, 2017, 4 years ago, almost 5 years ago, that's back then it was, yeah, it would be silly to think that Formula One drivers would start driving competitively in esports as well, or you would be able to make your living off of it. And where it is right now, it's quite mind blowing, especially thinking about how you viewed it 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, that must be it must be quite surreal to a certain degree to think when you started this off, when it was just a you and your brother,
Yeah,
having a bit of fun in on some games, to end up, as you said, on a stage in front of many people, racing competitively, that to an event almost that you've gone out to in the space of 4 or 5 years. That's quite a serious step, isn't it, to get from sharing a wheel at home to on a stage competing with people from all across the world.
yeah, yeah. No, definitely, it's something that you never see coming. And you say 4 or 5 years, but it feels like 10 years rather,
Yes.
because there's so many, you do so many races, there's so much happening in not only a fun world but also the sim racing world. So many, well, not events, but so many races and battles and great moments that it feels like much longer ago that I started racing. Well, TGP series was a bit longer ago, but especially also competitive racing. Yeah, it is really addictive to compete not only on stage but also compete with the best. And if you then can get away with a great result, then you'll you just want to keep at it until you're on that top step. So yeah,
It is a very addictive thing, isn't it? To be trying to find those hundredths, thousandths of a second
yeah,
to put together that lap that you can do in your mind, but just getting every corner, braking zone, acceleration right. How do you react when things aren't going your way? Does it really take its toll on you? Or?
um, I would say so. Yeah, definitely. Back in the TGP2 days, when I sometimes had crashes, I wasn't the most confident or the smartest driver when actually doing overtakes or defending. That's what I learned mostly in TGP2 as well. And then other people wouldn't be happy with me, and that really at that age it would make a little bit of an impact. But I think for the better, looking back at it. But like for instance, if a qualifying lap doesn't go well in current competitions, then yeah, it you have to work harder to be able to don't make those mistakes next time, and you're always trying to put the best lap together, of course, but the preparation for those laps will then get more intense. You try to not only practice more, but practice smarter and change your way of approach. And it's yeah, with these esports races, it's with COVID, there aren't many events, so most of these competitions are online. So then you're in your own room, and then the mental side of things can get to you in a way that when you're on a good lap and you think, oh no, what if I make a mistake in the next corner? And that will definitely happen now because I think about it like that. So that's, yeah, you really need to build some mental barrier sort of
Hmm.
to not make any mistakes in high pressure situations like that. But that's, I would say that's something I first learned back in the TGP2 days to, yeah, keep composure.
Now, if we talk about the first real big event that you took part in, um, of course, was the short-lived Cody's League
Ah, yeah.
Championship, back in
So yeah.
2013. Now, you were fortunate enough to represent TGP at the time, Isaac, but it didn't go particularly well on
that,
lap
that,
one between you and your teammate. Tell us a little bit of what happened with Mark Leonard. Can you
I
remember?
don't. No, not. I remember the first race with on Melbourne that I did make a mess of it in. I don't know. I don't remember with Mark what happened, but that I almost forgot my breaking point. But yeah, you can imagine as well for a 13 or 14-year-old such a big.
Yes,
I mean, that was pretty much the
huge. It was
first
huge.
first official like sort of esports race in racing games, the Cody's League, with all the best league racers. It was huge. So you know how nervous I would be
Yeah.
before that.
Oh, at that age, I can't
Um,
imagine what was
yeah. So,
what was going through your
but
mind.
what actually happened then?
Well, so as I've been informed by Dom Smith, apparently you and Mark Leonard had a bit of a collision on lap one while
Right.
while representing TGP. Maybe you've done quite well at blocking that bit out of your memory, perhaps.
Yeah, I don't I don't remember it at all anymore. I well maybe collision that I hit my I don't know if I remember it
We'll
correctly.
let you
That's
off. We'll let you off. It
yeah
clearly
yeah
wasn't that detrimental to your career
no
within
no
the world of
and Mark
esports.
no and Mark and I still talk on WhatsApp a couple of
Brilliant,
times a week, so we are good friends. And I met him a couple of times in London as well when I went
fantastic.
to Floche headquarters and during one of my trips. So no, it didn't impact me too much. I yeah, it made me even forget that it happened. So yeah,
Now, that was obviously, as we said, your sort of first real taste. Did
yeah.
did you catch did you catch the bug after that? Did that really sort of make you want to make something of this,
Mm,
or did it
I
not
would
quite
like to
come at
say
that
yes,
point?
but no, it wasn't.
It wasn't particularly well
To be
run, if I
honest,
remember.
it wasn't.
I can't. As far as I recall, there was only a sort of
Okay.
handful of races, wasn't there?
Okay. Yeah, I don't. It maybe even made it a little bit less so. Back then, of course, back then there wasn't anyone who would make a career out of racing esports. So
No.
I wouldn't be able to get motivation out of okay, this is my first like serious race. There's going to be more in the future because we simply didn't know that yet. But it did make me feel like okay, it's so much pressure. I'm so nervous. I'm not sure if I want to do this again because there is quite a bit of pressure on this, and I'm representing a league I care about and need to practice a lot and need to not make any mistakes. And of course, maybe as well, thinking about it, back in TGP2, I was used to starting from the front of the field, pole positions, front row. I always had qualifying sorted, but once in the Cody's League, I was racing against Harry Jacks, I believe ex-Matty G as well, Matt Gallagher, and those guys they were easily half a second quicker probably in qualifying. So then I started mid pack, probably a little bit more towards the rear of the field, and that made me even more nervous because one of my weak points would be race starts and racing with other people. So um, it was a big learning curve. And I think overall maybe a better drive and definitely cope better with nerves at such a young age. So
Hmm.
it was a good learning experience, but maybe a bit too much too early on
Hmm.
in my racing career. But yeah,
Now we've talked about F1 a lot, but the real area of esports where you've made a name for yourself is within the world of touring cars and project cars and Gran Turismo, which we've obviously touched on a bit briefly, Gran Turismo.
yeah.
But it, I mean, we'll come on to your vast and incredibly successful career in project cars shortly. But it never really quite happened for you in TGP project cars. Why do you think that was? If I remember rightly, your stats in TGP Project Cars was something like 5 pole positions and one race win in the sort of very early years. Had you not had you not quite caught the bug for Project Cars at that point? Was it a bit too early for you still? Do you think or?
I'm not sure to be honest, but I believe right at that point as well. when TGP started doing Project Cars as well, there was this ESL esports competition
Right.
that I would compete in, and I believe I mostly started to focus on that because that was really international. The
Mm.
race would get broadcasted as well,
Are you saying that
and there
something's
was
more
some.
important than TGP? I can't believe it.
No, no, definitely not. Definitely not. No, no, no. No, but yeah, it was, of course, esports was a little bit less competitive than TGP. Of course, TGP was a pinnacle. So I wanted to go for a bit more success than just poles and one race win.
You've milked that enough now. Um,
Okay, okay. Good, good.
but obviously you've had tremendous success on Project Cars, um, in ESL and various other different series. Why is it that you can really extract the sort of best of your performance while racing touring cars, etc.?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's just
Does it
I found
favour
it
your style of driving? Do you think?
probably. But back then, I would say I was still really developing my driving style. But I've in slower cars, I found it a lot easier to battle with people on track. In
Okay.
F1, it's of course you're driving the quickest cars in the world. It's a bit more difficult sometimes with lag as well to go side by side through corners or to make a good overtake maneuver. Touring cars are a bit slower, longer braking zones, and on Project Cars you've got really wide racing tracks, so it would be a little bit easier to maybe learn more about the racing combat, racing battling, and overtaking, defending, and that sort of stuff at the highest level. So I did like that, just the side by side. Back then I really liked overtaking around the outside, and because we all knew each other in the esports scene, we would give each other room as well, and complement each other on racing moves, even if we were being overtaken. So yeah, and then driving different cars on different tracks, just a high variety of cars that really spoke to me as well. Because on F1, of course, you only drive F1 cars on maximum 22, 23 tracks. So I think it was a breath of fresh air as well, driving different cars that you could slide around. Of course, maybe that's a little bit due to my history as well, playing Colin McRae Dirt. I remember
Mm.
in Project Cars you wanted to really slide the cars around. Um, so that spoke a bit to me as well. Of course, I had a passion for Formula One, be it the racing game or in real life watching it. But I was really interested in other racing series as well, and I think most part the being able to battle with other drivers on track, maybe with a bit slower cars, that was, I think, what really stuck to me for Project Cars.
And then, of course, moving on to Project Cars 2,
Right,
sort of, in the late 2010s, that's where you really hit your. You really just got going with it, didn't you? Really, I mean, just going through the list of what you won, what you achieved in 2019, of course, Project Cars 2, SMSR World Champion, 2019 Logitech G Challenge World Champion, and the 2019 McLaren Shadow Project. You finished third. That's
right.
just that's just unbelievable in 1 year to have that much success. That's it's incredible, isn't it? You're able to do that now. Why? What sort of came together for you? Was it just the sort of the time and the effort that you put in behind the scenes, or did a lot of things just sort of come about very nicely?
I think a combination of all of those things. So at the end of 2017, at the end of the lifespan of Project Cars 1, the original, there was this big esports championship, also the SMSR series called, but on Project Cars 1, and the final, which we qualified for with my back then team VP Gaming, a German esports team on Project Cars, we qualified for the final at Gamescom, where I got my first experience of actually like esports on a stage and being broadcasters and doing interviews, which I had never done before, and that really got me sort of addicted to that entire esports thing, wanting to compete more, wanting more of those trips, because essentially you get free trips to a different country and then doing what you love on a stage. So that really gave me a competitive motivational boost to when Project Cars 2 came out. Of course, everyone is on a level playing field because it's a new game for everyone. I really started to play that a lot, and I think because I started playing it from the start, kept active in those esports championship and playing it on a very high level. That's why it's at the end of the Project Cars 2 lifespan. That's when it started to pay off. Because I really understood the game. I had many hours in it. So a lot of hard work behind the scenes still with my then team, VP Gaming, to win the SMSR Esports Championship in London at the Mercedes-Benz World in close to Weybridge, I believe. And then throughout the year, just kept playing it. And then the Logitech G Challenge came along. And then I became the European champion in Cologne. And again, it was a live final in the V8 Motorsports Hotel next to the
Wow.
private Michael Schumacher collection with all his cars.
Gosh, that's
So
fantastic.
yeah, so mainly those esports championships or those trips, I was mainly doing it for those travels, those trips to other countries and amazing locations to get those trips. And then when I won the European final, of course, the next week I would be in Las Vegas. They flew me into Las Vegas for the World Finals, and we
Gosh.
got picked up from the airport in a limousine. So, and all through starting with TGP2 and driving some games on the PlayStation 4 or the computer. So yeah, that was really surreal. And then after that, it was just like a waterfall of events. After the European final, then the World final, I qualified for the McLaren Shadow final, where I got to spend a week at the MTC, the McLaren Formula One factory, just touring
Amazing
through there.
facility, isn't it?
Yeah, and walking past people like Zach Brown and Carlos Sainz in the halls of the MTC, and going to top secret halls as well, the spine where all the Formula One cars, the old Formula One cars, are being kept.
Amazing.
Just unreal. Yeah, and then
One.
also during that week driving the McLaren GT4 car on a Top Gear test track. Well, I really never had driven a real race car before, and all due to just playing those F1 games, Colin McRae Dirt, Gran Turismo. Yeah, who would have thought that like five, six
How
years
many
back?
times in those few days were you pinching yourself just to check to see if you were waking up as a 14-year-old having just lost a cohort around a time trial around Melbourne? That must have
Yeah.
just been unbelievable, mustn't it?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. So it was an unreal experience because, of course, it is an unreal experience. But um, when you're there, you're there still to compete. Of course, you see all those nice cars, and especially during the McLaren Shadow Week, where they really spoil you. Nice dinners at the Hilton hotels, and also just walking through the factory. It is all really nice, and it's like yeah, it's almost, it is life changing. But in the back of your head, you're very much thinking about the races that are coming up in a couple of days.
Mm.
Because I realized back then, if you win races, you can get really far. Judging from the SMSR World Championship and then the European Finals, and seeing what it all brought to me. So you're still very much in a competitive mood. And to be honest, I wish I maybe, well, of course, I enjoyed it a lot, but maybe really just take a couple of steps back and see where I am at that point.
Mm.
Might have I might have enjoyed it a lot more that by doing that, but yeah, back then I was just still really competitive mood. Of course, wanting to win those races because winning those races would mean I would end up in the McLaren Shadow esports team. Of course, I didn't win. I got P3, but luckily I got picked up by Floche, and they still put me into the McLaren Shadow team. So it all worked out
It
well,
all worked
like
out
I
fine.
planned. Yeah,
It must have been really hard not to be distracted by all those things that you were already experiencing. Um, And was those sort of little, I guess they were sort of tidbits really, as to sort of, well, if you keep doing well, there'll be even more of this. But did it,
Yeah,
did it? I guess it gave you a bit more motivation, didn't it, to sort of keep getting better?
definitely. Yeah, definitely. A bit more, well, a lot more motivation, but also a lot more pressure, and I think pressure from mainly from myself as well to do well. So after winning all those Project Cars championships, the main thing that changed for me is that if I didn't cross the line in first for big races, then I wouldn't be that happy. So
Hmm.
it made it a lot more professional, and I think the main thing that changed is that I put a bit more pressure on myself to get those results because I knew what it could mean. And it really started to get serious, of course. So, but after the McLaren Shadow project, um, yeah, it was clear to me that it could become a career and that I had to stay active, do a lot of races. Of course, Project Cars 2 was past its life cycle, so there weren't any competitions on it anymore. The game I had played for 2 years straight and put a lot of time in. So then I started to wander around different games, doing a lot of competitions on different games and being all around on all the games I could get my hands on. And yeah, that makes it a bit more difficult to be on the absolute top, like the top 3% of the players. But it made me more of an all-around driver, and that I think is what Flutter likes as well. That they can put me in any championship they want on any game, and I would do well. So, um, yeah,
I still can't get over that you went to Las Vegas.
yeah,
I mean, that's just unbelievable. I mean, being picked up in a limo, going to Las Vegas as a 19-year-old,
yeah.
and
Well,
it's
that might be
unbelievable. Every
that
kid's
might be a
dream.
disadvantage being a 19-year-old because
Yes,
I couldn't do
exactly.
anything there. I couldn't do anything. So I took Johan, one of my friends, with me, and of course I knew the guys I raced against well, so we are friends. And we would hang out at the hotel. And the weirdest thing is those hotels in Las Vegas, they have casinos on the ground floor, and you have to walk through casinos in order to get to your lift to your hotel room.
Goodness me.
And because I was 19, I wasn't allowed in the casino. So I had to walk through somewhere I wasn't allowed to be in order to get to the hotel, to my hotel room. Yeah,
And
it was
you
a
can't
really
drink over there either. Obviously,
no,
legally
no,
drink
no.
at
So
21, and that's really strange. That was really
yeah,
weird.
when we arrived as well, we just sat down in the hotel lobby. We ordered a couple of beers, and we were at the bar there. And I was asked, "Can I see your ID?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. Here you go. I'm 19." And they were like, "Yeah, we cannot serve you anything. And if your friends want to drink any beers, we would like for you to leave the bar because we cannot have you here being underage." So like, okay, all right. And then yeah, of course, it was still apart from that, of course, it was still unreal
Yeah.
to walk around there and to win it as well. And yeah, after that, of course, jet lagged. After the win, we drove Ferraris on the Las Vegas Motor Speedway the morning at 7 a.m. before the World Championship in the evening. So I was absolutely knackered. I almost fell asleep in my filet mignon in one of the restaurants there. So yeah, to be honest with you, there wasn't a big party, but I felt so full and maybe a little bit overwhelmed as well. Didn't party in Las Vegas, but still,
Shame, but
yeah, well,
understandable.
wasn't allowed to,
No,
but still had a lot of fun, and yeah, it's a experience of a lifetime.
100%, 100%, and obviously on top of that, as you mentioned as well, getting to go around the Top Gear test track,
Yeah,
that must have been pretty awesome to have the opportunity to do that.
definitely, definitely.
I mean, were you quick? I
It's
mean,
I was I believe I from all the competitors there were six there. I was third, and the guys in front of me they had a lot more experience driving real cars,
mm,
and well, if anything, they were able to fit in the car. I'm quite tall. I was with my helmet. I was every time I hit the brakes, my helmet would smash into the roll cage. So it wasn't the most
So
comfortable,
you were
but
sort of driving around half conscious. Your
yeah,
first real go in a GT car in real life, and a Top Gear test track. Unbelievable.
and every time I would hit the brakes and my helmet would smash into the roll bar, my visor would be put down as well because of that. So I had to keep on putting my visor up to see. So that was a challenge in its own. Still, um, nice thing as well when I jumped into a car like that, I didn't feel any fear of crashing. Just when you hop into a car like that, you just want to push, and of course it's still competitive. Those times were being added up in points of the McLaren Shadow Championship, so still competitive. But it was really enjoyable, and you always see people, celebrities, excuse me, drive around a track like that, and then once all of a sudden you drive it on your own and you can really see those details, and it doesn't look like too difficult of a track, but those runways are really grippy. They have really grippy tarmac. But
Right.
then when you turn off the runway onto those B roads, taxi roads, and those final two corners, for instance, of the Top Gear test track, they are slippery as hell because they are made of different tarmac. It's a little bit off camber, so you would turn off the runway, a lot of grip, and then tarmac transition, and then the car would just start understeering, which was first experiencing quite scary. And
And
of
they're
course, it's a very
left-handers as well, so you're not even used to
yeah.
that from the G27, are you? You couldn't even use that practice.
Exactly. So it would make it really, really difficult. But yeah, of course, it's still an incredible experience to just first of all spend the day there and then to drive those cars as well. Yeah,
Were you
incredible.
tempted to sort of use a little bit extra tyre grip for the other guys, sort of take a bit of life out, get
Well,
yourself into P1. Those guys are more experienced, they would have finished behind you. Then you would have looked like the hero.
yeah. But when we arrived there, it was a damp track, still morning. It was quite wet, and then those guys were going in front of me on wet tires, and then the track would dry out as the sun would come up and it would get warmer. The track was drying out, and then when I jumped into the car, they were like, "Oh yeah, I think it's the instructors." They were like, "Okay, we put dries on the car because we think it's dry enough," but the track was still covered in wet patches, so it was really tricky to
Quite
get used to
greasy.
that. Yeah, no, definitely. And those wet patches, they would really make things even more difficult because at the center of the track, the crossover point, it's a figure of eight track. At the
Mm.
crossover point, it's all different kinds of tarmac, concrete even as well, very bumpy. And in those bumps, there would always be a little bit of water. So off camera as well, the left-hander of turn two, that would be really tricky. So I wanted to take more out of the tires to give a disadvantage to my competitors, but I couldn't because they were so cold and slidey. So no, yeah,
There you go.
but
The real
yeah,
racing
really
driver
fun.
coming out in you there. That's what we like to
Yeah,
hear.
driver excuses. Yeah, definitely.
Now, we obviously you touched on missing out on the chance to be signed up for McLaren Shadow, but what you've gone on to do with Veloci and obviously signing for them, and what it has subsequently led you to, it certainly it wasn't a um, it wasn't a bad thing missing out on that, really, was it? As you said, sort of ending up with McLaren Shadow anyway via Veloci,
Yeah,
that was such an amazing thing to have the opportunity to join them, wasn't it?
yeah, definitely. And I joined Veloce, I think at the perfect point as well. They are an esports team that was founded in 2018, if I'm correct. They were quite new, but they were very quickly making the scene. And when I joined them was in early 2020. Of course, that's when all the lockdowns started happening, and then that's also when that first what's it called F1 virtual race with
Mm.
Lando Norris and all kinds of celebrities and real life drivers. That's when Veloce started to organize those things, and when it really started to the team started to increase in popularity. Floche started to manage F1 esports teams like Alfa Romeo when they took over McLaren as well, the McLaren F1 esports team, and also what other team? They've got Alfa Romeo, McLaren, and now as well Mercedes.
Mm-hmm.
And they really just started to grow and manage, and very quickly started to become the biggest esports sort of team, but also agency slash esports force out there in the industry. So I joined them at the perfect time, and they were able to put me in some really good championships, often invite-only championships. So I could compete with the best teams, the best drivers there. Yeah, when the V10R League came along, it's a championship on Assetto Corsa with a massive prize pool of 200 grand, I believe.
Wow.
They were putting McLaren as well as team into that championship, and they asked me because I was quite an all-round driver. Not many people drive Assetto Corsa competitively. They put me in the team next to James Baldwin as well, and Alvin Smith, the guy I beat in the Las Vegas finals. So it was a team that I knew very well. It's great atmosphere to practice with as well. And already having visited the MTC, I already knew a couple of people behind the scenes, so that was an added bonus. And Yeah, so great things. And then at the moment I'm still Veloce esports driver, but also driving for one of their other managed teams, Yashid, in the endurance championship, the virtual Le Mans championship.
Well, you've just been doing that in the last
Um,
24 hours, haven't you? Of course. Yes. Well, for us,
yeah,
when
yeah,
we're
I
recording this, when this is going out, this wasn't done 24 hours ago. Anything could have happened then. But just yesterday you were taking part, weren't you? Of
yeah,
course.
yeah, actually, and that's also a very big championship on R Factor. And yesterday we did the 8 hours of the Nürburgring Nordschleife in LMP2 cars, which, yeah, I'm still recovering from with that combination. And also multi-class, so we had to lap GTE cars, which aren't that much slower on the Nordschleife, which was really, really tricky. Also in a team with James Baldwin and some other guys from the Yashi team. So I've been mostly doing that, and at this point I'm just going from championship to championship, and being part of Veloce, they're able to put me in some really cool competitions, and the Le Mans virtual 24 hours, like the one we had in 2020. They're going to do that again next year, early January, when most of the drivers have their off season, the real drivers have their off season, and they're going to put that on the Autosport International show in Birmingham. So, of course, I did quite a couple of trips and events to different countries with esports before COVID happened, and then, of course, during COVID, none of the events went through. They were all cancelled. So, Birmingham in January might be my next big esports event. So, I'm really looking forward to that, and hoping I compete well there in one of Veloce's teams. Yeah, finally able to maybe do some offline events as well on stage. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, it'd be nice to get back to doing those again.
Yeah,
And maybe going to some nice corners of the world still, by the sounds of it. Getting back to travelling across a bit. Now
yeah.
you had a quite a special spectator when you were racing in the Nordschleife yesterday, weren't you? It sounded like he was trying to find someone for a bit of help
Oh,
paying his fine.
I was, yeah, I was trying to figure out who you're talking about. But yeah, that's true. That's true.
So
So
that must be a bit surreal for you as well, knowing that Max was watching you.
yeah, well, that sounds a bit creepy.
Might have to change that one in the edit.
Yeah,
He was watching you race.
yeah,
Obviously,
exactly,
he
exactly.
wasn't watching you directly. That would be that would be a completely different podcast, wouldn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
But so, obviously, I can imagine he, played a huge part in your sort of inspiration growing up to be as a motivation, as a success as he has been in Formula One, for you to do and succeed in the virtual world of racing, and obviously what that could lead to. That must have played quite a key part for you when you were growing up and practicing.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. And of course, Verstappen is part of Team Redline. So that was the official Discord with all of the teams in there. And he is watching as well, in, clearly between his practice and sprint race. So that was pretty funny as well. Other teams were laughing about that. So that's really cool to see. But yeah, motorsports wasn't too big in the Netherlands. It was quite niche in the Netherlands before Verstappen came along, and now, well, you've obviously seen the Dutch Grand Prix. It's a little bit popular, more popular
That's
now.
a must go, isn't it? I mean, that
Yeah,
just looked
yeah,
fantastic.
absolutely, absolutely. So, uh, well, back in 2013, we started to hear a little bit of rumors of another Verstappen next to George or Jos Verstappen coming along and doing really well in karting. So then, of course, he won the World Championship in karting, and he started doing Formula 3 races, which we started to watch with great interest. And then seeing him progress through the ranks to Formula 1, and then win the first race in 2016, and then see the Netherlands explode as well in, like they call it here, the Max Mania, that everyone is or knows about Verstappen and watches Formula 1. People who didn't really think much of Formula One before that. It's pretty funny to see them being interested in it now as well, and um, so that's been cool, and it has been a motivation because it's really grown in popularity. So then you want to benefit from that as well, doing well and um, being known as a good esports driver in the Netherlands as well. So it's been a motivation, but yeah, I wouldn't say it was a um, the
It
most
wasn't it
important
wasn't it
factor
wasn't
in.
pivotal
Yeah,
in your
exactly.
career, but it certainly, I guess, gave you a bit of extra motivation. I'm sure, didn't it?
Definitely, definitely, yes.
So you've achieved so much so soon in your esports career. What's next? Where do you see yourself going next? What can we see from Isaac in the future?
Yeah, I have no clue. Absolutely no clue. But of course, it's a little bit dependent on COVID as well. I'll just keep trying to do my best. I'm still studying here in the Netherlands in Delft aeronautical engineering. So I might
Gosh.
have to do, or I probably have to do a internship at the end of this year. But I want to keep racing as well. If I can do an internship at McLaren, then I can do my work there at the MTC and then drive in one of their simulators as well. They have a new esports center there, so that would be a win-win. But I still very much try to do my best in the competitions Voloche puts me in, and I'm coaching a little bit at you might know him as well, Drive 61 on YouTube. They have a sim racing academy. I coach
Oh
for that,
yeah.
and then next year I'm looking to take a step into real racing as well on the real track. I last week I received my helmet, new racing helmet. I still got the racing suit from McLaren, so that's a nice takeaway. But starting to look into club racing here in the Netherlands and starting to see if that's a possibility for the future. We got the car lined up, seeing if everything's possible. Still need to get my racing license, but that's hopefully a nice next step for next year alongside studying and also those hopefully offline events again from sim racing.
Well, obviously, if you need any tips about racing in real life, yeah, I'm always here to provide them. Of course, yeah, I don't obviously I don't give
Yes,
my knowledge out that often, but yeah, I can maybe make an exception. Um,
definitely, definitely.
now, obviously, you did make a very brief comeback to TGP, of course,
Yeah,
this
right.
year in the
Yeah.
10th anniversary race, which you very nearly won, of course, and you had a great
Mm.
battle with Corey, um, which was great to see. Did you enjoy coming back for that? Was it sort of nice to sort of come back to the roots?
Definitely, yeah. I enjoyed coming back. I enjoyed pole position, and I enjoyed
Another one,
battling with Corey. But then, what's that? Yeah, another one to add to the
another
tally.
pole.
Yeah. Does it officially count towards one of my TGP two poles,
No, I'm
or?
closing in on the record.
I've seen that as well. Getting a little bit nervous. Maybe I need to make a comeback in
May,
order to defend
I
that
think
title.
maybe you do. I think Don would let you.
But that was a lot of fun to talk and race with all the guys again. That was a lot of fun. Of course, still the competitive side of me is a little bit disappointed that I didn't get the win. But Corey is a great driver and he's got more hours than me in F1 for sure. That's another racing driver excuse, I realize. But
You're coming
it
out
was
with
really
all of them
nice.
at the moment. It's
Yeah, exactly.
my bingo card is really getting ticked off at this rate.
Yeah, need to make sure I defend myself well there. But no, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, and looking forward to anything that TGP does in the future as well. And keeping my eye on that, definitely.
Good stuff. Well, just to finish up, we're going to go through our usual quick fire questions
Oh boy.
part, which isn't actually very quick. In theory,
Okay.
it is. Just a couple of last questions, just to see us off court. Isaac, even that was embarrassing. It's going out in the edit.
I...
Um, First of all, first question: favourite circuit to race on?
Nordschleife.
Wow, gosh, did
Yeah.
not see that one coming.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it yesterday, even though the server crashed a couple of times. It's a blast, especially in a quick car, downforce car. That last sector after the carousel, it's my favorite track, definitely. I've raced it once in real life. Well, raced it. I've driven it once in my Mitsubishi Colt from 1997 with like
Hold
50
on, hold on.
horsepower
You've
up
been
the hill.
round the Nordschleife in real life.
Yeah, Touristenvaart. Yeah, with my car. Back then, my first
Fantastic.
car. Definitely. I was looking more. I was looking into the rear view mirror more often than in front because of all those high-speed cars passing me.
Yeah,
I was doing
holding up a
60 up
few
the hill.
Porsches, I reckon. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, just blinking to the right constantly. But it was a nice experience. So I would say
Wow, that's
Nordschleife,
amazing.
definitely.
Brilliant. Least favourite track racing on?
Um, Monza, I think Monza.
Okay, interesting take. Is it why they're a bit narrow?
No, just with esports you do a lot of practice, of course, and Monza is the most lucky RNG circuit you can get. It's so difficult to put the perfect lap together. But if you can hit those curves perfectly, braking zones perfectly, traction zones perfectly, which sometimes is a little bit difficult to gauge and to know how to put all of those things together in a game, you can be 3-4 tenths quicker, even though you've done the exact same thing as before. So it's a little bit of a difficult track. Well, not difficult, but it's not the track I like most because I've done so many laps on it, and yeah, it's not. I don't prefer it, to be honest.
Well, I'm sure you and many others would agree. What's been your most proudest moment in your career so far?
Um, I would say the initial SMSR championship win. Um, I raced with my team VP Gaming, which yeah, just a great team with friends still I keep in contact with, and that will help me as well, hopefully, or that are helping me a little bit to get into the real racing seat. Still have contact with from those days, and then beating Veloce as well with James Baldwin when he was making or when he just had won the E-Rock and the Race of Champions final in Mexico, and to beat him, one of the best sim races that's out there at the moment, that was a great, I would say, a great feat, a great battle with him as well. And then things just started to get rolling, and it went from there. But I'm still most proudest moment for me is winning that final race against James. Great battle with him, and securing the first championship.
Brilliant, fantastic. And the last question then,
Yeah, lots of
what?
quick fire questions these.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just one more to go. Then we'll
Yeah.
leave you to your evening.
It's all good.
Last question. So what's one moment that you'd change in your career so far if you could? Has there even been any?
Um, One thing I would change in my career. Maybe not leaving TGP2 after my first
You
championship.
know what? Let's send it there. That's all we need.
Yeah, probably that. Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant. Well, that is the right answer. Dom will be very happy with that one. Isaac, it's been an absolute privilege. I've thoroughly enjoyed this chat.
Likewise,
I
likewise.
wish we could keep going for longer. Maybe we'll have to do a part two. Sit down with Isaac for the TGP Has a
Yeah,
Podcast. But
I'd be down for that.
yeah, good man. That's what we like to hear. Well, Isaac, honestly, huge congratulations on all you've achieved so far in your short career. It's only going to go on for a lot longer, I'm sure, and
I hope so.
huge luck for all the events you've got coming up as well. It's been an absolute privilege. Thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you so much, and yeah, looking forward to the future and seeing as well what TGP brings. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Good stuff. Thank you. So there you have it. Isaac Gillissen, the man, the myth, the legend, and everything that's got to go with it. What a fantastic opportunity it was to sit down with him and have a chat about his past and what's coming up in the future, of course. We'll tune in next week where we've got another TGP icon we're having a chat to, and it's the man from Scotland. Aidan Griffin sits down with us and has a chat about his past in TGP and what he has to look forward in the coming years. Thank you so much.